Hello, I'm Leslie Dutton. Today on Full Disclosure, we're going to bring you the news behind the news about foreign student visas and the international student programs. Our guests today are experts on this subject. First, our guest is Jim White with the UCLA Office of International Student Services. He holds a Master of Law degree in International and Comparative Law from the Free University in Brussels, Belgium. He provides legal counsel to UCLA students who are here on F1 foreign student visas. Our second guest is Richard Knickerbocker, a constitutional attorney on immigration issues. Thanks so very much for joining us today. We appreciate it. There has been a lot of talk about student visas, and people really don't know what that is, a student visa. And UCLA is probably one of the world's foremost respected international student programs. Could you give us a little background about the student visa process?
When a student from another country who resides in and or is a citizen of another country is accepted at UCLA or at another university or college or even sometimes primary and secondary schools, they will be issued an I-20, which shows that they've been accepted, and it shows that they've shown enough money to pay tuition and fees and to live while they are engaged in a course of study. This I-20 is then taken to the U.S. consulate, and the F1 visa is obtained. In some cases where there's sponsorship, official sponsorship, governmental sponsorship, agency sponsorship, or institutional sponsorship, we may issue what's called an IAP 66. They'll take that document instead of the I-20 to the U.S. consul and be issued a J1 visa to come study in the United States.
Wow, and can you give us an idea? There's been reports out that during 1999 and 2000 that almost 500,000 foreign students were here in the United States. How many of those attended UCLA?
We only have about 2,200 on visa. And then we have another 200 or 300 that are dependents or spouses of other visa holders, like worker visas or intra-company transferees or governmental workers. So we have a large contingent of international students on our campus.
Very good. Now, Richard, you've been an observer both in the courts and as an active attorney on immigration issues. There's been a lot of discussion in recent days about concerns about student visas. Mm-hmm. Do you think that with all the discussion that there's going to be a demand for tightening up the student visa process?
I think that there's no question about it, and I think that the time has come. I remember way back when we did the Bradford case. The Bradford case was a case whereby we challenged the financing of illegal aliens. One of the policy concerns was that the very thing that has happened in terms of student visas would happen. In other words, we predicted almost 10 years ago that there was going to be problems. Some of the problems that we predicted were the fact that we would allow people who were people from foreign powers who were not covered. We thought that they would be financed, that they could bring in drugs or other things, that they could have criminals come in when in the guise of student visas, that they would come in with no hope of ever returning to their country and marry on a ruse or have children, and then have the situation of having to deal with them and clothe them and house them and provide welfare payments for them. All of these factors, and we were not against immigration. We were against lawful immigration, checking people out, making a comprehensive study, and making a determination that the people we brought in were the people we wanted in, mm-hmm. not someone who came in and eventually just made the decision for themselves.
Well, that brings up a question. While you are an advocate for the foreign students,
yes,
what is your responsibility with regards to checking backgrounds and finding out where their location is if they drop out? Do you have a responsibility there?
Well, there used to be a responsibility like that placed on the schools, but in 1996, when they changed the laws, it was missing. That provision whereby immigration would be automatically notified of the whereabouts of a student. There was nothing.
So it was an oversight in the legislation, or do you think it was done deliberately with some reason behind it?
I have no idea why it was missing, but it's one of the loopholes, I believe, that even if a student gets your I-20 from a particular school and enters the U.S. and doesn't attend your school, there is no reporting requirement to the INS whatsoever.
My goodness.
School. And sometimes I see documents come back from the central database, INS central database, indicating their records show a particular student at our school, and upon checking we find that the student never showed up. So there are loopholes like that, and I don't know why they exist. I don't know if it's oversight or intentional.
I see. Richard, from the standpoint of the university, now with the discussion about the possibility of some of the, I guess it was in 1993, the bombing of the World Trade Center involved somebody on a student visa. Do the universities hold any kind of liability for if someone doesn't show up and doesn't come to classes?
I don't think they have liability because they have broad-ranging immunities. I think that the problem is that there are so many different people saying that they are governmental bodies saying that they have responsibility, and yet nobody has responsibility. There have been arguments for federal preemption. That was one of the big arguments that were raised with regard to the Bradford case. They said it was preempted and the government shouldn't do anything. Well, the truth is that the Immigration and Naturalization Service hasn't done anything. They haven't done what they should do to protect the citizens of this country, and they haven't allowed anyone else to do so. So the problem is that we should have both people do it. We should have the people at the university check in. We should be partners, not adversaries with the federal government. The federal government should take a position, a strong position, and make a determination as to when people come in and when they go out. These persons, when they come in, have virtually all the constitutional rights of an American citizen. But there should be some of the things that they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have a blanket right of privacy. Their privacy should be limited. Maybe they should consent to searches so that in the event that they're bringing in things that they should not be bringing in, or they're being financed by someone else, we should be able to know about that. And if they're going to get visas, they're going to get access, they ought to waive some of these rights as a condition of coming into this country.
Okay. We're going to take a quick break now, but I want to tell our viewers that we were expecting to have the Assistant District Director of the INS for all of Southern California to be here today, and we just got a call this morning that the Washington had sent a memo saying they didn't want anyone out there as a spokesperson other than in Washington. So we regret that we don't have that spokesman here today. Now we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
In the government, there's a phrase used to restrict access to information. That phrase, need to know. At fulldisclosure.net, we want you to have all the information you need to be an informed citizen, unlimited access to all the information we've gathered on our TV show. And if you can't watch us on your local cable station, streaming video of complete shows when you want them. Fulldisclosure.net, when you need to know the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure. We're talking with Jimmy White of the UCLA International Foreign Student Service and Richard Knickerbocker, constitutional attorney. Jimmy, tell us, when you are an advocate for the foreign students, and you must develop probably a relationship with many of them, helping them out and addressing some of the problems.
Yes.
Is there any concern about what courses they come here to take? I mean, if you get, let's say we know there were several thousand students come from Libya. If they went to take a chemistry class or engineering class, and we don't have diplomatic relations with that country, is there ever a concern raised as to whether or not this was appropriate type of studies?
Well, in terms of individual classes, Leslie, no. But in terms of majors or the background of the individual, if they're in certain backgrounds that are listed on what's called a technology alert list, then they must undergo a background investigation.
At the university level?
No, at the U.S. consul level, before the visa is issued. When they go into the consul with their document, they are then, if they're of that kind of major or a field of study, they're then told that there's an investigation that must be conducted in some cases, and they have to wait. Or if they're from some countries, like Iran, I believe there's an automatic investigation that is done on them that takes a few weeks.
But once they reach the university
once they
level?
reach the university and they are in their field of study, and if they have electives and they want to take classes in any field, if the classes are open, they're normally welcome to do so. And we don't monitor them. We're not law enforcement on the campus. We don't have that responsibility, nor do we have the budget or the personnel to get involved in that. That should take place elsewhere with the government.
Okay. Now, Richard, once the consul has approved a visa and the students come here, let's say like to UCLA, do they have a right to constitutional protections once they're here and entrusted, we're entrusted with their well-being? Is there some rights that they have?
Yeah, the Constitution refers to persons, not citizens. So each of these people have the constitutional rights of all people who, just like somebody who was born here, for instance. And there's at least the inertia of someone being here for a period of time and knowing what their record is and what they are, what their health situation is, and things of that type. There isn't that kind of thing with regard to people coming into the country. And once they get in here, they have a right to avoid searches and seizures, unlawful searches and seizures. They have a right of privacy to a certain degree. They may have some rights with reference to actually looking at their financial records. Each of these things relate to persons, not to citizens. So unless we have a waiver, and there are waivers sometimes with regard to search, for instance, as a condition of probation, there could be such a thing with regard to a condition of admission into the United States on a visa. And I think that they should waive certain of these constitutional rights for the protection of the people of the United States when they come in.
I see. Now, in your position,
Yes.
it must be pretty frustrating sometimes when you see the Immigration Act being amended and you've witnessed these loopholes, and you, as an individual trying to perform a job, it must be pretty frustrating, huh?
Well, personally, I try to remove my personal feelings from my profession. And of course I notice it. I'm a trained lawyer, and certainly I've got a lot of experience in this field, and I certainly noticed it right off. But I don't judge it. I just hoped that there was some other mechanism in place where the government could continue to do its job and monitor the borders of our country like all other countries attempt to do. But I'm not aware of what they do in lieu of having a reporting mechanism in place to be notified when students are not enrolled in school or are done with their program of study and or their 1 year of practical training after the program of study. I don't know what the government has been doing or plans to do about these people, but it's certainly not in the law in a way that schools are responsible for reporting to the government.
Do you ever get any notification or a list from the INS who issues the visas from the consular about who you're expecting to come to enroll? Do you have any premonition of who's coming?
Well, we get our list from admissions office. We know who's coming because of the I-20s and the IEP 66s that were issued for students, pursuing a full course of study in a particular field of study. INS doesn't get involved on that level. From time to time, we do get inquiries from INS as to whether a particular person is present at our school or not, and we're required to respond to that.
Okay, but if they don't show, you're not required to report it.
Exactly.
Okay. And Mr. Knickerbocker, what do you think? Is this is an area that could be improved upon?
Well, it's a little ludicrous. We see on the news, we see students protesting. Many of them look, at least by their appearance, as if they're foreign students. They would not have that right in their own country to protest their government. They come into the United States, they get First Amendment rights because they're here, and they're protesting against our government and fomenting basically disrespect and disregard for our government. I don't think we need to bring people in for the purposes of creating dissension in the United States or for the purpose of organizing groups against it. It just seems to be so absurd. I can't believe that we ever do it, and I can't believe that we don't follow up, and we haven't followed up. It's just a disgrace. The immigration policy of the United States is an absolute, unequivocal disgrace.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. Well, when we come back, we're going to ask our guests what would they like to see the government do to rectify this situation.
Emmy Award-winning Full Disclosure is streaming video on the web at fulldisclosure.net. Just click on our streaming page, select the show you want to watch, and get ready for the only Emmy Award-winning show to uncover corruption, expose voter fraud, and have its editorials rejected by the LA Times. Streaming video of your favorite Full Disclosure episodes when you want to know what the politicians are really saying. fulldisclosure.net, the news behind the news.
Welcome back to Full Disclosure. We're talking about foreign student visas with our guest, Jimmy White from the UCLA International Student Services, and our constitutional attorney, Richard Knickerbocker. Well, gentlemen, I would like to ask each of you, if you could have a say on how the immigration and particularly the foreign student visas system or process could be improved, what would you recommend? And presuming they were going to listen to you, the government. Jimmy, we'll start with you.
It's not an easy question for me to answer as a professional in this business because I have to put on another hat to think about this. When I was in the Air Force, I was involved in the security of our base in Germany for 3 years, the most important base in the Western world. So I have a lot of ideas about this security issue, but in terms of foreign student procedures, I believe the government could be a little bit better if they put some mechanisms in place, some reporting requirements about when a student leaves a campus, if a student doesn't show up for a particular term and is expected to show up, there could be some ways in which the government could be notified. Whether that is initiated by them or by us, I don't know who should do it. But that basically is what I think could be done to help in this area. Other things are a lot more intrusive, and I'm really not in a position to talk about that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And also, I guess we have to consider about who would pay for it, too, if it was initiated, because the money would have to come from somewhere. Exactly. Richard, what would your thoughts be?
Well, first of all, I would require that we have, as a part of the application for a visa, we have a full disclosure of the financial arrangements by which the person got the money by which to get here. Secondly, I would require a written waiver of constitutional rights with reference to search and seizure, with reference to disclosure, and with regard to checking with regard to the foreign country. If it is a country for which there is no access to that information or that country denies us access, I would deny any foreign students from that country until they provided that financial information. I would require each person applying to be fingerprinted and photographed. I would require them to set forth their job record, employment history, and educational record with appropriate transcripts which could be examined. If we could not get access to the foreign transcripts, we should have either a means for testing to test in lieu of those transcripts, or we should have another means of verifying the information. We should have a requirement that they check in on a regular basis and provide a notice of any changes of address. We should provide that the failure to do so would be a felony with a minimum of a 10-year sentence without any discretion with regard to the reduction of that sentence. Those are some of the things we could do, and we would stop this problem.
Well, that sounds like you're really putting teeth into it. Well, what comes to mind, do you ever get requests for transfers where a student has come here and then they decide that they want to go somewhere else?
Oh, all the time, yes. Either transfer after completing a course of study and then going to a higher level program, or transferring within a program level, within a bachelor's level or a master's level. We get them all the time, yes.
Or transferring to other schools
in the United States, yes.
And that is permitted?
That's permitted.
And there's no requirement right now to report that?
Yes, not to the INS, exactly. The reporting is school to school. The receiving school issues a new I-20 or an IEP 66, and the old school must verify that the individual is in fact in status and eligible to transfer. In terms of the IEP 66, we actually sign off on the bottom of it. But there is a school-to-school reporting mechanism in place.
Once the visa is issued and admissions notifies you that they're coming,
yes,
is there any reason for you to question the legitimacy of who that person is, or to verify indeed that is the person that arrives?
Well, we have to look at and copy their passports and their I-20s and the I-94, which is a little card they get when they come through the border into the United States. We must copy those and keep them in their file. I mean, obviously, if we copy somebody's passport and it's a different name than on the I-20, then bam, we have to do something about it. But that's rarely the case. What we do have sometimes is different spellings of names on an I-20 and on a passport. Like a guy came to me just yesterday, and he said, "I got a problem." I said, "What is it?" And he says, "My name is different on the 4 documents I have." I looked, and each name was on 2 documents, different names, different spellings of the name. And I said, "Did you give them the spellings of these names at these times? Your passport has a different spelling than the I-20, and the I-94 is the same as the I-20, but your other ID, your driver's license says the same thing as your passport." He goes, "Yeah, I told him that." And I said, you put yourself in this kind of problem now. You can't be giving them different spellings of your name. You got to be consistent. But we find that kind of a problem more frequently than somebody who's trying to, an imposter, mm-hmm. somebody trying to pretend they're someone else. I've never seen that kind of a problem.
Mm-hmm. Richard Knickerbocker, what do you think? How would be the best way to verify that the person who arrives here to go to school on a student visa is indeed the person that they say they are?
Well, I mean, what we have so far is a fingerprint record. We have, with just a visa, it's hardly to say that gives us the kind of information that an immigration analysis would give us. I think that one of the major problems with the immigration policy is that the policy is very, very tight. Those persons who want to obey the law and want to go through lawful immigration. It's very loose with regard to illegal aliens and persons with student visas who may never intend to follow the law at all. So I think one of the things we should do is we should ease the requirements with regard, in other words, make it easier to lawfully abide by the law, provide all the information in terms of immigration when immigration is really necessary, provide a means by where people who are actually here can get their status recognized and where they can be tracked and followed and determined who they are. And at the same time, when we have people who are not properly here, or when we haven't had the type of study that we would have if these persons were to be immigrated, that we do the kind of study or not let them in. Visas are too easy and immigration is too hard. I think it should be harder to get in to begin with. Once they're in here, there's a real problem. They're probably going to be here forever. They're going to have babies, they're going to get married, they're going to have here, and they'll probably never go back to their country. We're not helping other countries, and we're probably not helping ourselves.
Well, we're all out of time right now, so I'm glad that you're going to come back for part 2 of this program, and we can find more about what kind of financial impact and assistance is available for the international students. So I want to thank our distinguished guests for coming on Full Disclosure today to share their perspectives with us on the foreign student visa process. We want to hear from you, the viewers, about this issue. Who do you think should be responsible for tracking the foreign students in the United States? Should it be the INS? Should it be the universities and the colleges, the FBI, or the Justice Department? And who should pay for it? Please call our Full Disclosure Town Hall number at 1-800-867-7777. That's 1-800-867-7777, and cast your vote and let us know what you think. Or you can email me at leslie@fulldisclosure.net. And if you leave your name and number and email address, we'll get back to you. Please join us next time for part 2 of this program, when our guests will discuss what the universities are doing to preserve the international student programs on campus. Thank you. Thanks so very much. The Full Disclosure Program is a non-commercial television program produced as a public service by the Citizens Protection Alliance, a non-profit 501c3 tax-exempt educational organization. If you would like a videotape copy or a transcript of our public service program, a listing of all Full Disclosure programs, and a channel guide with airtimes, please call us at our toll-free number at 1-800-867-7777 or visit our website at www.fulldisclosure.net. Be sure and leave your name, address, and phone number or email address, and we'll get back to you.